When you hear Department of Education, or DepEd, it's easy to just picture this giant government building, right? A bureaucracy. But what if we looked at it in a totally different way? What if we saw DepEd as the lead architect, drawing up the blueprint for our entire nation's education? Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We are unrolling that blueprint to see how it all fits together. Let's dive in.
So that leads us to the big question, right? What is this blueprint for Philippine education? What's the master plan that's shaping the journey of every single Filipino student, from their very first day of class all the way to graduation?
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into DepEd's core purpose. Its big picture vision. Then we'll check out the 10-point action plan that turns that vision into reality. After that, we'll see how policies actually get made, how all of this impacts students, and we'll wrap up with this really powerful idea: education as liberation.
Okay, first things first. To understand any blueprint, you have to get inside the architect's head. You've got to understand their vision. So we're starting with the why, the fundamental purpose that fuels this entire system.
This, right here, this is the soul of the whole thing. It's not just about getting good grades or passing exams. The real vision is about shaping whole people, citizens who are smart and capable for sure, but who also genuinely love their country and are fired up to help build it. So how do you even begin to achieve a vision that big? Well, that's where the mission comes in. It makes that huge idea concrete. It's a promise, really. A promise to protect the right of every single Filipino to an education that is high quality, fair, and culturally aware. And it all has to happen in an environment that puts the learner, the student, right at the center of everything. And guiding everything are these 4 core values. Think of them as the system's moral compass: being God-fearing, humane, nationalistic, and environmentally conscious. These aren't just words on a poster. They're meant to be the DNA of the curriculum, shaping a student's character just as much as their intellect. All right, so if that was the why, now we're getting into the how. This is the 10-point action plan. This is where that grand vision gets its nuts and bolts, its actual strategies for making things happen. Now, before we jump into the plan, we need to get what DepEd's official job is. Their mandate, right? Their core function is to create and carry out policies for all basic education. And that doesn't just mean traditional schools. It also includes non-formal learning. It's the whole shebang. Now, here's what's really cool about this 10-point plan. Instead of just a long laundry list, you can see it really boils down to 3 main themes. There's direct support for students, things like feeding programs. There's future-proofing the curriculum to keep it up to date. And then there are these big system-wide improvements to make the whole machine run smoother. Okay, let's make this less abstract. Here are some real-world examples. The full rollout of K-12? That's huge for aligning us with global standards. Expanding the alternative learning system, or ALS, is absolutely crucial for reaching kids who aren't in regular schools. And then things like feeding programs and financial reforms, they show you the focus is both on the student's immediate well-being and on making the system itself stronger. So, we've got the vision, we've got the action plan, but how does that big picture stuff turn into the actual rules a teacher follows every single day? This next part is all about the process, how a big idea travels from a meeting room all the way into a classroom. And this isn't just some random, made-up process. It's actually official. Back in 2015, DepEd put a formal system in place called the policy development process to make sure there's a clear, consistent way that policies are created, implemented, and even updated. Rolling out a new policy isn't as simple as sending out an email and calling it a day. No, it's a 4-step journey. It all starts with really careful planning. Then, you've got to communicate it clearly to everyone. Then, and this is so important, comes capacity building, which is basically training people on how to actually do the new thing. And finally, you have to monitor it and get feedback to see if it's even working. But here's the kicker. It doesn't stop there. Policies aren't just carved in stone and forgotten. They have regular review cycles. They collect data. And, most importantly, they get feedback from the people actually on the ground, the teachers, the parents, the students. That makes the whole process a living, breathing thing that can adapt and change. So, to put it super simply, implementation is about launching something new, getting it off the ground. Review is about looking back at what's already running and asking, is this still working? Can we make it better? One is about starting, the other is about improving. You absolutely need both. Okay, this brings us to what is probably the most important question of all. With this vision, this plan, this whole process, what's the bottom line? What's the actual payoff for a Filipino student? What does this entire blueprint promise to deliver? Turns out there are four key things.
First up, and this is a big one, quality. The goal here is simple but massive, to keep raising the bar for education across the entire country. And you measure that with things like national tests, with a really sharp focus on closing the gaps between different groups of students.
Second is accessibility, and this is a promise, really. It's a commitment that every single Filipino child, no matter where they live, what their situation is, even if they're currently out of school, has a path to get an education. This is why programs like the alternative learning system are so incredibly vital. And third, you've got relevance. Because what's the point of learning things that are totally outdated, right? The curriculum has to stay in sync with what's happening in the real world. It has to give students the skills they'll actually need: critical thinking, problem solving, to be ready for whatever the future throws at them. All right, now for the last one. And honestly, this might be the most profound idea in the entire blueprint. It goes way beyond just test scores and future jobs. It frames education as something much, much deeper. This is the ultimate goal. And that final goal is liberation. I mean, just think about that word. This is the idea that education is a powerful, powerful tool for empowerment. It's the belief that a diploma isn't just a piece of paper. It's a key that can unlock doors, help a student break free from cycles of poverty, find their voice, and become a person who can truly help build our nation's future. At the end of the day, it's not just about what you know, but who you have the freedom to become. So let's just trace that blueprint one last time, shall we? It all starts with a powerful vision that puts the student first. That vision gets legs through a strategic action plan. That plan is put into motion through a methodical process for policies. And that entire structure is built to deliver four clear outcomes for every learner: quality, accessibility, relevance, and ultimately, liberation. So this blueprint, it's more than just a plan for schools. It's a plan for a nation of future citizens, which really leaves us with one final big question to think about. With this ambitious design laid out, what's the next great challenge waiting for the Filipino learner?